You know, this whole issue about documents and classification and espionage and all the rest, I've spent a lifetime dealing with this. As Chief of Staff to the Attorney General of the United States, as you well know, tons of this material would cross my desk. I would read it. I'd be in meetings over it. Black operations taking place, all kinds of testimony provided, and every day it would come across my desk or I was in meetings involving it. And at the Department of Justice, when I was there was an Assistant Attorney General by the name of John Bolton. John Bolton knew all this too. In fact, we all knew all this. And here's the thing. I never brought any documents home. I never took any notes. It never even occurred to me to write a book about my time as Chief of Staff to the Attorney General of the United States, let alone a book that contained classified information. Now, why am I telling you all this? Because it's very, very important. The Attorney General had to have faith in his Chief of Staff, just like the President of the United States has to have faith in his National Security Advisor. That's correct. You're not there to gather information, take notes, and if you have a problem, or if you become disgruntled, if you're fired or you quit or whatever, you're going to write a book about it. That is absolutely outrageous. And not only that, you're going to make money from the book. Now, before I get into some of the details here, you're at the right place at the right time, of course. I want to give you some background that's never given for some reason. You see, this matter involving John Bolton and his book and the classified documents and information, it was litigated. And what happened was, it went before a senior judge by the name of Royce Lambert at the District Court in Washington, D.C. I know Royce Lambert well. I had some cases in front of him. He was appointed in the 1980s. He was a Reagan appointee. There was a point in time, as I recall, that he was involved in the criminal division or the civil division. And so there was a case in front of him. On June 20th, 2020, he issues an opinion, and I want to read this to you. You're going to find this fascinating. What happened is the Department of Justice goes into court because John Bolton released his book with classified information in it. The background, John Bolton accepted a role as National Security Advisor. This is written in the decision by Judge Lambert. In April 2018, in this position, Bolton directed and supervised the work of the National Security Council staff on behalf of the President. Think about that position, how important it is. He left his post on September 10, 2019. Within 2 months, he secured a book deal. The government anticipates the public officials will seek to publish accounts of their experiences. When those officials have access to sensitive information that implicates national security, the government guards that information by conditioning employment on a guarantee of non-disclosure. Bolton accepted this condition of employment and executed multiple non-disclosure agreements with the government. In one agreement, Standard Form 312, Bolton agreed that he would, quote, never divulge classified information to anyone unless A, he has officially verified that the recipient has been properly authorized by the United States government to receive it, or B, he has been given prior written notice of authorization from the United States government that such disclosure is permitted. In the event Bolton was uncertain about the classification status of information, he was required to confirm from an authorized official that the information is unclassified before he may disclose it. Violation can result in assigning to the United States government all royalties, remunerations, and emoluments that have resulted, will result, or may result from any disclosure, publication, or revelation of classified information not consistent with the terms of SF 312. Bolton agreed to abide by the restrictions of SF 312 unless and until he is released in writing by an authorized representative of the United States government. Another agreement form, 4414, detailed conditions Bolton must follow to gain access to highly classified, sensitive, compartmental information, SCI. That's the highest level. Here, Bolton agreed to submit for security review any writing or other preparation in any form that contains or purports to contain any SCI or description of activities that produce or relate to SCI, or that he has reason to believe are derived from SCI, that he contemplates disclosing to any person not authorized to have access to SCI or that he is prepared for public disclosure. Bolton promised not to disclose the contents of such preparation with or show it to anyone who is not authorized to have access to SCI until he had written authorization that such disclosure is permitted. Now, in December 2019, Bolton submitted a draft manuscript to the NSC for pre-publication review. Over the following 4 months, Bolton worked to incorporate the edits he received from the Senior Director for Records Access and Information Security Management at the NSC, Ellen Knight. These edits were iterative and extensive. And on April 27, 2020, Knight communicated to Bolton that she no longer considered the manuscript to contain classified material. Bolton claims that he and Knight discussed the possibility that the final written authorization might be ready as early as that afternoon. The written authorization did not issue, and Knight soon clarified that the process was ongoing. Weeks passed without further communication between Bolton and the government. On June 8, 2020, John Eisenberg, Deputy White House Counsel and Legal Advisor to the NSC, issued a letter to Bolton that claimed the manuscript still contained classified information. By that point, Bolton had already delivered a final manuscript to his publisher for printing and shipping without written authorization and without notice to the government. What happened was the Department of Justice under President Trump went into court to try to get an injunction to prevent any further printing and distribution of the book. The judge said, yes, Bolton disputes that his book contains any classified information and emphasizes his month-long compliance with the publication review process. He bristles at the mixed messages sent by pre-publication review personnel, questions the motives of intelligence officers. Bolton could have sued the government and sought relief in court. Instead, he opted out of the review process before its conclusion. Unilateral fast-tracking carried the benefit of publicity and sales and the cost of substantial risk exposure. This was Bolton's bet. If he's right and the book does not contain classified information, he keeps the upside mentioned above. But if he's wrong, he stands to lose his profits from the book deal, exposes himself to criminal liability, and imperils national security. Bolton was wrong. This is the judge. The government submitted classified declarations for the court's ex parte review in camera. So the court looked at the documents or the notes or whatever information was at issue. On June 19, 2020, the court held ex parte hearing for further in-camera review with the government. The parties, the judge, in the chambers reviewed the information. Upon reviewing the classified materials, as well as the declarations filed on the public document, the court is persuaded that defendant Bolton likely jeopardized national security by disclosing classified information in violation of his non-disclosure agreement obligations. Now that is damning. Bolton was the national security advisor to the president. He was entrusted with countless national secrets and privy to countless sensitive dealings. To Bolton, this is a selling point. His book is entitled The Room Where It Happened. He rushed to write an account of his behind closed-door experiences, produced over 500 pages of manuscript for review. Not 4 months later, Bolton pulled the plug on the process, sent the still under review transcript to the publisher for printing. Many Americans are unable to renew their passports within 4 months, but Bolton complains that reviewing hundreds of pages of a national security advisor's tell-all deserves a swifter timetable. Access to sensitive intelligence is rarely consolidated in individuals, and it comes as no surprise to the court that the government requested several iterations of review headed by multiple officers. But what is reasonable to the court was intolerable to Bolton, and he proceeded to publication without so much as an email notifying the government. The judge's conclusion, Judge Royce Lambert, district judge. Defendant Bolton has gambled with the national security of the United States. He has exposed his country to harm and himself to civil and potentially criminal liability. But those facts do not control the motion before the court, and so he denied the injunction. But that's not the point. That is a damning statement by a judge in an 18-page decision where he looked at the classified information. Damning, which is why almost none of the news media are reading to you what I just read to you. This is from the judge. United States of America versus John Bolton. June 20, 2020. This is what the judge put out. So the Department of Justice in 2020 launches an investigation of Bolton, a criminal probe. into the classified information. And what are they looking at? Well, you've heard of it before, the Espionage Act. No doubt they are. They even set up a grand jury. And they're looking under the Espionage Act, I assume 18 U.S.C. 793. Also, for those who are wondering about a statute of limitations, since this was 5 years ago, under the Espionage Act, Section 18 U.S.C. 19, it's a 10-year statute of limitations. So no statute of limitation is run, or it's not even arguably run. And so they were doing a criminal investigation. And then what happened? The Biden regime takes over. Merrick Garland takes over. And what do? Now keep something in mind. Bolton's book comes out months before the election. It's intended to harm Trump. Keep something else in mind. The so-called impeachment committee in the House, the Democrats, they wanted to interview Bolton. He refused. He saved whatever information he decided to present for his book. So it was clearly profit-oriented, right? So he refused to testify to them, not on purely constitutional grounds, because he would turn around and then present it in his book. Well, what happened to that investigation that was launched? I mean, you heard what the judge said. What happened to that investigation? Here's what happened to it. June 16, 2021, the Biden regime's in power, the Attorney General's Garland, and they issued the following stipulation of dismissal. Pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 41A1A2, the parties stipulate the dismissal of this action with prejudice, all parties to bear their own fees and costs. That's it. No explanation, one sentence. We dismiss the case against John Bolton. They kill the investigation. It's done. Why? Why? Where are the underlying documents that were used? Did he turn them back to the government? Is that good enough under the federal law? That's the politics, isn't it? After a scathing opinion by a judge like this, after the book itself presents evidence of classified information that was withdrawn, removed from the Department of Justice, isn't the politics, this document, the June 16, 2021 document from the Biden regime, without explanation, just dismissing the whole thing? Now, do you think that would fly with anybody else? Anybody else? Now, let's dig into this. So at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, Friday morning, the FBI goes to John Bolton's home and to his office. They have a warrant. Warrants are backed up by affidavits and other pieces of information, evidence that they may have. You need to have probable cause to show the court of possible crime that was committed. And the Espionage Act, as I mentioned, 18 U.S.C. 793. There could be other aspects that they're looking into as well. The Presidential Records Act, who knows? They're looking at the removal, destruction, concealment, use, misapplication of classified information. Bolton's book. The question is, what happened to that classified information? The documents, notes, other information? All accounted for? Were they put to other uses? New York Post indicates this investigation is broader than just the documents related to the book, but it's a leak investigation. They report leaks that are being investigated, they report, during the Biden administration. Okay? So that's beyond the book, even though these pieces of information are in the book. The fact that any information was used, even if it's in your head, there's not physical documents or texts or emails of any kind, after your service, in a way that's inappropriate, is enough. So we've discussed this before in the documents case. It's a very broad statute, very broad statute. So the politics was when the Biden regime cut it off. Now, this is the same Biden regime that unleashed holy hell against Donald Trump as he left the presidency. Within months of leaving the presidency, the Mar-a-Lago raid. Oh, it's not a raid. Okay, it's a warrant. It's a search. But it's funny how they're now calling the Bolton warrant with a search a raid. But when it was Trump, don't call it a raid. It was a court-authorized warrant. with affidavits. It was unbelievable. Of course, there's a huge difference. Donald Trump was president. It's been my argument from day one. The Espionage Act doesn't apply to a president or a former president. Read the history of it. Read it. It was passed in 1917. It had no intention of being applied to a president of the United States. And how could it? The Constitution trumps any statute. President of the United States can classify or declassify at will. He doesn't have to go through a process. He doesn't have to ask an underling. He is the head of the executive branch. He's in the Constitution. Classified, declassified. He can declassify on the spot. The president even said at the time, if I'm thinking I'm declassifying, I'm declassifying. People mocked it, but he's correct because there's no way this statute can legitimately apply to him. That aside, notice how aggressively they went after him. Warrant. They went after his home. They went into his home. They took photographs. They made them public. They tried to humiliate him, and on and on and on with the documents. Oh, we had all these debates, the Espionage Act, the Presidential Records Act, and went on and on and on. And in the end, of course, the rogue prosecutor was unconstitutionally appointed, and he lost his job. Yes, it's true that they dismissed the case, but Judge Cannon really forced it because she effectively dismissed him. Now, all that said, is this retribution? Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is not retribution. Oh, I see the sad faces on TV and the crocodile tears and look at Trump, he's a dictator and so forth. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard me read from the judge's decision. The issue is whether any crime was committed. It was the Biden regime that cut off the investigation. Cut it off. Because the book that came out trashing Donald Trump was helpful to the Biden regime. It was used right up to the election. That's where the politics is. That's where it is. But imagine being the FBI director, the Attorney General of the United States, and this issue is hanging out there. The book's still out there. The regime, the Biden regime, dismissed it without explanation. Never. There's never been an explanation. Because the explanation's obvious. It was done to help Joe Biden. That's, in my view, my personal opinion, where the reward is. That's my view. But imagine not having this resolved properly. No explanation for killing the criminal investigation. And the individual at issue, John Bolton's, still out there all over TV and so forth and so on, which he's free to be, with this never really being satisfactorily resolved. Now you know the whole story.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.